Okay, thanks everybody. I was not expecting to see so many people here tonight. So let's start. This talk was made according to ISO 1664 Larache method, and my material consists of old notes about old stuff. So let's flick the switch. First disclaimer, the views expressed in this talk might be mine and do not represent the opinions of any entity affiliated to me, be it past, present, or future. Second disclaimer, audience discretion is advised. Audience participation is welcome at appropriate time. Please make it visible if you want to express yourself. Third disclaimer, the information is provided as is without warranty of any kind, express or implied, including but not limited to the warranties of merchantability, fitness for particular purpose, and non-infringements. In no event shall the authors or copyright holders be liable for any claim, damages, or other liability, whether in an action of contract, tort, or otherwise arising from or out of connection with this talk or the use or other dealings in this talk. Thank you. So, if I recall correctly, the title of this is Random Tidbits about old stuff. And it's today, 20 minutes ago. So, who am I? I'm a curious person. I'm a stochastism generator, according to somebody. I'm a procrastinating southpaw. And I'm a pope, and you can be as well. I'm also a security analyst, but this was not done during the course of my work. So what is random? This is an audience participation slide.
4. Nice.
Yeah, 4 can be random. Anything can be random, really. What's old?
More than 5 years.
More than 5 years?
Yesterday.
Yesterday?
Past.
The past? Go tell that to a geologist and you will see what his answer is. And to answer to your question, what are tidbits? I'm not sure. It's like small pieces of information, I guess, or like anecdote. And what are words? Okay, this concludes my presentation. Do you have questions? Thank you very much for attending, and please throw away your trash. Okay, what are phones?
Things to talk over a line.
So phones were allegedly invented by Sir Alexander Graham Bell. The phone services used to be state monopolies. Now it's no more the case. It used to be a secret switch, and at first it was like real ladies in big like phone switching centers doing that, and the equipment used to take up a lot of room, and in Switzerland some are being reconverted into student accommodations. Phone booths are disappearing, and there is this small thing that you might have heard of, an MT450, GSM 900, UMTS mobile phones. Who heard of mobile phones? Nobody?
What's that?
Yeah, real audience. Okay, so I hear that mobile phones are a staple of the modern world. The use of modern phone is so prevalent that when you don't have the phone on you, you have the impression that you are missing out on life, and most people stick to their phones like it's their clothes, or even more than if it were their clothes. And administrations and businesses all over the developed world and even in the developing world assume more and more that everybody should have a phone, and yet it's not a public service. So who has a mobile phone? Okay, one person. I do have a mobile phone.
Yes.
Okay, majority of persons here has a mobile phone. Typical smartphone. So most smartphones currently run Android. But actually, when we say that the smartphone runs Android, it's not the whole smartphone, it's just the APU. So the baseband, aka the radio, runs their own OS. The big developers of basebands are Qualcomm and Samsung. Basically, you get the chip, you get the real-time operating system to run the chip. And then there's also the SIM. So you carry a phone, huh? So the typical cell phone is a very complex engineering, yet in a world where short-lived humans are incentivized towards short-term profits, phones don't last long. So it shows through the quality or lack thereof of the software engineering, not even the build quality of most phones. Yet you should have trust in your phone. Who cares? Okay, who here knows how Android works? Sometimes. On a technical level? Not much? Okay. So please, if at some point you don't understand, feel free to raise your hand. So most phones nowadays use some kind of non-volatile storage, usually some kind of flash. And usually you have a lot of partitions, one for such bootloader, one for such bootloader. Usually you have a multiple level of bootloaders. One for the baseband, one for the system, one for the user, a whole lot of partitions. But actually, this access to the flash, I believe, is not necessarily enforced. I mean, you cannot necessarily be sure that one processor might be accessing one partition that it's not supposed to. That's just a fact. So, the baseband. I didn't take a lot of time to look at basebands. Usually you talk to them using AT commands like you used with the old modems. And yeah, it's usually running some vaguely POSIX real-time operating system. And most people don't know about them. Then the SIM, the USIM. When you do on your phone like pound, 8121060, this kind of stuff that has UMMC codes. Those are sent to the SIM code via an interface. So it's a Java card, like a bank card or pay TV card or whatever. And usually it uses tamper-resistant chips. You cannot really see what's inside. And it exchanges information with the phone. So you could put a tab there. There are like devices pretty cheap that you put in your phone instead of the SIM, and then you put the SIM and you have serial link and you can like spy using Wireshark what the fuck is happening between the SIM and the phone. But it's still considered a black box by many. The baseband processors, if I recall correctly, on some MediaTek platforms control the APU. So it's not visible to the APU, but actually it sits on a hypervisor level relatively to the APU. So it's considered a black box. It could and it did run the full stack on the simple feature phones. You had only one processor. And apparently there are a lot of bugs at that level. So what is the APU? So the APU can mean the auxiliary power unit. It's a generator used inside airplanes to provide 4 Hz AC power to avionics and other equipment. This is the APU for business jets. Apu, in the US cartoon series The Simpsons, an Hindu immigrant that tends the Quickie Mart. He's got a loving wife and probably too many kids, and I'd avoid his hot dogs. Now, about the phones, it means the applicative processing unit. It's like the main CPU that runs your user space, like not user space, but your phone operating system, and this is not considered a black box. So who's played with Android? Most people. So yeah, rich ecosystem, blah blah blah, Linux kernel, Bionic Eclipse, Java API, Dalvik or Art, virtual machines. What's an APK file? Okay, you have the answer. Yeah. And the cool thing is that it's pretty easy to play with APK files. Jab is not an open source tool, but it's a very well featured tool. You take IDA, you pre-increment every letter, and you have Jab. I believe that's the mission statement. And yeah, it's the old pkware zip format. What do you use the most when you look at software? I don't know if you look at software, like inside software. IDA Pro? Yeah, if you have the budget, it's nice. Maybe overkill for some purposes. Strings? Yeah, that's a good one. Very useful. Objdump, good one.
Nano.
grep. Of course, if your data is scrambled or not textual in nature, then you have to pre-process or do without and take other tools. But grep is actually the most useful tool there is. And RG is quite a nice, a faster implementation. It's in Go. I happen to have a binary, if you trust me, and want the binary and don't want to install a Go toolchain. So, the multiple personalities of an Android. So, Android is interesting because they could not let everybody use the Linux directly. They had to invent their JavaCraft on top of it. Okay, now I am trolling, sorry. So you have this tweaked newish Linux native userland with the Bionic libc. And on top of that, you have this virtual Java userland. And the normal user, as a normal developer, you're not supposed to interact with the native systems. You can, if you are porting some games or complicated libraries, you can, using the GNI, Java native interface, you can do that. Most people maybe reuse libraries made by other people, but most Android developers, I don't believe they go this low level, which it's not even low level, but yeah. So let's be virtual for some time. Welcome to the Matrix. Here's your cake. What's an intent in the Android way of working? Anybody knows?
An event sent between applications.
An abstract description of an operation to be performed. This is correct, and this is, well, according to Android. So, it's as in real life, really. Whether you intend to start an activity or to provide a service, you always have to declare your intents, and you always have to ask for permissions. It's the same in Android. But how do you do that in Android? Well, let's be manifest. You have this android.manifest.xml file that is mandatory, that provides all the metadata that your application has to tell the system about. Can be how to start the app, what's the name of the app, what permissions the app requires, if the app provides background services, a declaration, and what intents they are interested in receiving or sending. So, let's say you got a new phone and you're curious. So, you probably want to know what's installed on it, what's running on it, how long will the battery last, and will it make my selfies great again? Maybe don't do this, but if you go to settings, about phone, tab build version 7 times, then you have the developer menu, settings, developer, the USB debugging, you install the Android debugger. And why I say don't do this, because on the old version there was no authentication at all. It means you plugged it anywhere and anybody could use the debugger facility. On new versions, if your phone is unlocked, you just have to approve this computer, approve forever, and yeah, you give full access, potentially root access to anybody through that. But it's a wonderful tool. You can copy files to and from. You don't have to deal with the buggy PTP or MTP transfer protocol. Install, uninstall, update, reboot, and you got the shell. So you got the shell. It's your own Linux computer. But do you own your device? Do you have root access? Okay, let's assume you have, because if you don't really own your device in reality. And yeah. Should you really run a phone when you are not root? I'm not so sure. Okay, so now that you have a root, you have your phone, you want to know what the fuck is on it, then welcome the hot stepper, the package manager. So adb shell pmlist packages.f, you got the list of the packages and the locations. You can push, pull, it should be pull. You pull them out and you should have the destination here. and you got the APK locally on your phone, on your computer. So once you have it, you use your normal tool, you do what you want. So let's assume somebody got a phone and it's spurious in nature. It's like suspicious. So somebody found a smartphone which is running Android. They got root access on it. They dumped quite a lot of the flash partitions, like system partition, data partition, and if I recall correctly, the recovery partition. And they made the dump publicly available on BitTorrent. So, what the fuck is this? Let's pretend we don't know what the fuck it is. So, an Android device has two partitions, the system partition and the user partition. System partition, you're not supposed to access it, it's a read-only partition, and you have to have this build.prop file at the root of your system partition. It's like settings, key value storage, and so you have RO or RW to determine whether it's read-only or read-write value. And then you just subclass your stuff. So it's obviously a MediaTek MT6582 phone. And we can see that it's a Xiaomi 82 WET GB5 for a customer called Korea BOE. And it's old, it's running ARM5 in case you need to cross-compile stuff. Sorry. Okay, now you got a weird phone, you want to know what is on it, and actually you don't have a phone that is started, you just have the file systems. So on the data partition this time, you have a subfolder that is called system, and which is also normally accessible only by the system. And in this you actually have these big XML files that list all the packages, all the permissions, and what permissions are linked to what user ID. You also have a packages.txt or packages list that is quite redundant, but yeah, Android is a bit a goofy platform. And so we noticed that there is an application on this phone that is called kuts.ktr.rf service, and the name of the app is red flag. And so does the user ID 10038 has any particular data on it? No. This application provides a native library path, so it means it's using native libraries. So it's not just using Java code, it's using some stuff that was probably ported, that was probably developed in C. And when we unpack the application, we see that it uses receives boot completed. It means that when the phone boots, the app starts. And it used to be on the FSociety GitHub repository. It's gone with no comments, as it's often the case for this kind of content. So, this red flag. If we just look at the Android manifest, you notice that it reacts to such events are when you connect or disconnect media, when you boot, when you shut down. It asks for permission to dump the frame buffer, take screenshots of your device. It can mount and unmount file systems on your behalf. And actually, the truth is always in the code, unless when it is not and when it is in hardware. The app was not obfuscated at all, and it's quite tidy, very easy to read Java code. And you can see that they tried multiple approaches that covered screenshotting, including using an external binary. And I think that this comes from an older period when they could not do it through the API, maybe the official. Nah, I don't know, but my intuition is that people have been coding on this for some years. So here's a screenshot. We don't see a lot of things. We can just see create table, browser history, create table, capture list. You can look it up, it's on BitTorrent, but basically, oh yeah, and the name is interesting, it's legals.db. So basically, the feature of this application, I didn't run it, but my understanding at this point is that it logs some actions of the user to the database. For example, browsing to websites. It also automatically scans all the files when you connect or disconnect a USB storage device. And it has a list of file formats, and when it gets a match, it happens some signed data at the end of the file. This is similar to what was discovered on the desktop operating system. What was it, Red Star? I'm not sure if it's the same API exactly, the same libraries, but it's a similar feature. And yeah, you have those two interesting C libraries, libmednatsign and libmedselfsign, that deal with this feature of like adding a small blockchain to the end of the files. They seem to use a custom implementation of the symmetrical original cipher, also known in the West as AES. And some key material can also be found on in some locations. It seems that there is no way to remotely accede to this database. It's not being uploaded through the network, apparently. So it implies that this data is only accessed if there is an inquiry, if you behave suspiciously, somebody takes your phone, and here's the SQLite database, and they can look through your activity and see whether you are obedient or if you are looking for trouble. But this is just one app on this phone. And what level of analysis is needed to be certain enough that you have covered everything? It's quite a hard question. So a lot of stuff could be done. So you want to know what differences there are between the typical phone of the same make and model, because these Gioni phones were sold in multiple countries, and this MediaTek platform was also used by multiple implementers. So you want to do binary diffs of everything. Sorry. And the flash dump we got from BitTorrent, we want to put it on the real device and maybe see some stuff that we did not envision happen. Not in production GSM network. I would not recommend that. And what about the other apps, like the browser, the Office apps? There is a game that asks for the contacts. What about the kernel? What about the content of the radio partition, which is MediaTek Molly, for which you can find for free on Chinese websites the specifications and the tools? It's just MediaTek company proprietary stuff. They put it everywhere. It's China. Some people might be interested in analyzing the implementation of the wage dial cipher. Yes, multiple axes on that. So is it like conform to normal test vectors, and can you do time attacks? What modifications to stock apps were potentially done? A lot of stuff. You never know. What is enough? Like, it's very difficult to ensure that everything has been audited when you are running something as complicated as a modern cell phone, and hence the need to run it in the labs. But even in the labs, yeah, you don't have like the remote endpoints maybe communicating, and maybe if the MCC is not set to the correct one, you never know whether you are like simulating it with a good enough level of fidelity. Yeah, what is enough? Define done. That's a hard deal. So, trust but verify. That's a principle I apply, and it seems like they do it too. Okay, Q&As.
How did you end up analyzing this email?
Last Congress in Leipzig, some persons torrented the images. So, yeah, I downloaded it and I looked at it. Swiss law says nothing against that. Other questions?
The chat or stream?
Questions on the stream? People on the stream?
I'm doing the signaling. Three.
Oops.
One is.
Oops. Shit.